Black Uber drivers return lost wallets every day, Marcus thought as he stared at the expensive leather billfold in his palm, not realizing that this simple act of honesty would change the course of his life forever. The wallet was heavy, weighted with the kind of premium cards that Marcus had only seen advertised on billboards he drove past during his 14-hour shifts. He'd found it wedged between the seat cushions after dropping off a fare at one of those Hollywood Hills mansions with views that stretched all the way to the ocean. Rain pattered against the windshield of his aging Toyota Camry, the same steady rhythm that had accompanied him for most of the evening. Los Angeles rarely received rain, but when it did, the city transformed. Streets glistening under streetlights, the usual smog washed away, leaving a clarity that felt almost like honesty. Marcus sat in the empty parking lot of a 24-hour diner, engine idling, wipers squeaking across the glass. 3 missed mortgage payments, 2 months behind on Jamal's tuition, 1 final notice from the electric company taped to his front door. The wallet in his hand contained enough cash to solve at least 2 of those problems. Marcus rubbed his thumb across the butter-soft leather, feeling its texture against his calloused skin. 5 years ago, he'd been a screenwriter with promise, the kind people at parties nodded at appreciatively when he mentioned his development deal. Now at 43, he was just another middle-aged man with a rideshare sticker on his window and a dream that had dried up like so many others in this city of broken aspirations. He flipped the wallet open, not to take anything. Marcus had never stolen a thing in his life, but to find identification. A California driver's license belonged to one Richard Brennan. The address matched the mansion where Marcus had dropped him off. The face in the photo had the confident half-smile of a man accustomed to being photographed. "Mr. Hollywood," Marcus muttered, slipping the wallet into his jacket pocket. The Uber app was quiet. Rain always slowed business, and he had time before he needed to pick up Jamal from his late-night campus job. He could return the wallet now, collect what he hoped would be a decent tip from a clearly wealthy man, and perhaps make enough to buy groceries without dipping into the tuition money. The hills loomed dark and imposing as Marcus guided his car up winding roads slick with rain. Headlights carved tunnels through the mist, and the wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour that had intensified, as if the heavens themselves were trying to wash away the city's sins. His GPS directed him through gates that opened automatically. Someone was expecting a visitor, though not him, and up a curved driveway to the modern mansion perched on the hillside like a geometric sculpture. Marcus parked and sat for a moment, gathering his courage. Houses like this made him feel small, reminded him of all he hadn't achieved. With a deep breath that fogged the car windows, he stepped out into the rain, the wallet secure in his hand. The doorbell echoed inside, its chime expensive and melodious. Marcus stood dripping on the doorstep, suddenly aware of his worn jeans and the coffee stain on his shirt collar from a passenger who had braked too suddenly that morning. The door swung open to reveal Richard Brennan, more imposing in person than his driver's license photo suggested. Tall, with silver threading through his dark hair, he wore a casual outfit that Marcus recognized as the kind of simple clothing that cost more than his monthly rent. "Yes." Brennan's voice carried the slight impatience of someone accustomed to gatekeeping his time. Marcus held out the wallet. "You left this in my car earlier. I'm your Uber driver from about 2 hours ago." Something shifted in Brennan's expression. Surprise followed by what might have been respect. "You drove all the way back up here in this weather to return my wallet?" The rain drummed harder on the roof above them, and Marcus felt a rivulet of water trace its way down his spine. "Yes, sir. I thought you might need it." Brennan stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come in, please." "You're soaked." Marcus hesitated, one foot on the threshold between his world and Brennan's. Water pooled beneath him on the imported stone floor as he stepped inside, feeling immediately out of place among the minimalist furniture and what appeared to be original artwork on walls designed specifically to showcase them. "Let me get you a towel." Brennan disappeared down a hallway, leaving Marcus alone in the entrance foyer, trying not to drip on anything that might cost more than his car. When Brennan returned, he handed Marcus a plush towel and took his wallet, examining its contents. "Everything's here. Every dollar, every card." He looked up at Marcus with new interest. "That's rare in this city." Marcus dried his face, the soft fabric a luxury against his skin. "Not where I'm from, sir. My mother would have had my hide if I'd even thought about keeping something that wasn't mine." "Where are you from, Mr. Wem?" Marcus Washington. South Central, originally." Brennan nodded slowly, his eyes taking in Marcus more carefully now. Not just the worn clothes and the exhaustion around his eyes, but something else. Something Brennan seemed to recognize. "You look like you could use a drink, Marcus. And I definitely need one after realizing I lost my wallet. Would you join me?" Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed. Jamal's text read, "Dad, you coming? Library closing soon." "I'm sorry," Marcus said, handing back the towel. "I need to pick up my son from college. He works late at the campus library." Brennan reached into his wallet and pulled out several $100 bills. "Please take this as a thank you." Marcus looked at the money, enough to cover the electric bill with some left over. But something made him hesitate. Pride, perhaps, or the memory of a time when he hadn't needed to accept handouts. "Sir, I appreciate it, but I just did what anyone should do." Even as the words left his mouth, Marcus knew they were foolish. That money could help Jamal. Brennan considered him for a moment, then reached into his back pocket and produced a business card. "Richard Brennan, Apex Productions," he said, handing it to Marcus. "Take this instead, and the money. Consider it a finder's fee for my wallet." Their fingers brushed as Marcus accepted both, and something electric passed between them. A recognition, perhaps, of something shared despite their different circumstances. "Thank you," Marcus said finally, tucking the money into his pocket with a mixture of gratitude and resignation. "No thank you, Marcus Washington," Brennan replied. "Integrity isn't as common as it should be." As Marcus drove down the hill toward USC's campus, the rain began to ease, and he found himself glancing at the business card on his passenger seat. Richard Brennan, executive producer. The man who had everything Marcus had once dreamed of becoming. The irony wasn't lost on him. 10 years ago, he'd been sending scripts to producers like Brennan, waiting for calls that never came. Now he was picking up his son, who was studying business instead of film, because Marcus had insisted on something practical. Something that wouldn't break Jamal's heart the way Hollywood had broken his. Jamal climbed into the car with the energetic exhaustion of a 20-year-old who had been studying too long. Tall like his father, but leaner, with the same intense eyes that missed nothing. "You're late," he said, but without real anger. "Library closed 15 minutes ago." "Sorry, son. Had to return a wallet to a customer up in the hills." Jamal raised an eyebrow. "They tip well?" Marcus patted his pocket where the cash sat heavy against his thigh. "Well enough to pay the electric bill." "Good," Jamal said, leaning back against the headrest. "Because we were definitely not doing another night of candles." He paused, studying his father's profile. "You seem different. What else happened up there?" Marcus shrugged, keeping his eyes on the road. "Nothing much. Just met someone who reminded me of something, I guess." "Reminded you of what?" Marcus thought about Brennan's eyes when he'd realized everything in the wallet was untouched. The respect there. The recognition. That I'm still the man I always wanted to be, even if I'm not where I thought I'd be. Jamal was quiet for a moment, then reached over and squeezed his father's shoulder. "You're exactly where I need you to be, Dad." The apartment was dark when they arrived home. The electricity already shut off despite the payment plan Marcus had begged for that morning. Wordlessly, Jamal moved through the rooms, lighting candles they'd strategically placed during previous outages. The warm glow softened the shabby furniture, the peeling paint, the water stain on the ceiling from last winter's leaky roof. Marcus pulled out Brennan's money and set it on the kitchen counter. "I'll pay this first thing tomorrow. Should have power by tomorrow night." Jamal nodded, then hesitated. "Dad, I've been thinking about something. I want to drop one of my business classes and take a film course." Marcus froze in the act of removing his jacket. "What? Why would you do that?" "We agreed." "No, you decided." Jamal interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. "And I went along with it because I knew how much it hurt when your dreams didn't work out. But Dad, they're my dreams too. Always have been." Marcus sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly feeling every hour of his 14-hour shift in his bones. "The film industry chews people up, son. Especially people who look like us. Maybe. But some make it through. And things are changing." Jamal sat across from him. "Besides, I'm not you. My path won't be your path." In the candlelight, Marcus could see his late wife's determination in Jamal's eyes. That same stubborn hope that had made him fall in love with Serena, that had sustained her through the cancer until the very end. "One class," Marcus said finally, "but you keep the business major." Jamal's smile was worth every compromise. "Deal." Later, as Marcus lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he found himself thinking about Richard Brennan again. About the mansion on the hill with its perfect view. About the life he'd once imagined for himself. He reached for his nightstand and picked up Brennan's card, running his thumb over the embossed lettering. On an impulse he couldn't quite explain, Marcus reached for his phone and composed an email to the address on the card. He didn't expect a response. People like Brennan received hundreds of messages a day, but something compelled him to write anyway. Mr. Brennan, he typed, "Thank you again for your generosity tonight. I wanted you to know the money will keep the lights on for my son and me this month. I also wanted to say that I used to write screenplays before life took me in a different direction. Meeting you reminded me of that part of myself I thought I'd lost. No need to respond. Just wanted to express my gratitude. Respectfully, Marcus Washington." He hit send before he could reconsider, then set his phone aside and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would be another long day of picking up strangers, navigating traffic, and trying to make enough to keep their heads above water. But tonight, for reasons he couldn't articulate, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years: possibility. 3 days later, after a particularly grueling shift that had taken him from LAX to Pasadena and back to Venice Beach, Marcus checked his email while waiting for his next ride request. Among the bills, promotional offers, and tuition reminders was a message from Richard Brennan. "Marcus, I hope this email finds you well. I've been thinking about our brief encounter and your note. I'd like to meet with you properly. No obligation, just a conversation. I'm interested in hearing about your screenplays. Would you be available to come to my office this week, Richard?" Marcus read the message 3 times, his heart beating a rapid rhythm against his ribs. It wasn't an offer. It wasn't even necessarily an opportunity, but it was an open door, something he hadn't seen in a very long time. He replied with hands that trembled slightly, agreeing to meet Brennan at his office the following afternoon. That night, Marcus pulled a dusty box from the top shelf of his closet. Inside were 5 screenplays, printed and bound, each representing months of his life. Dreams captured in dialogue and direction, worlds he'd created during late nights after bartending shifts, early mornings before Serena woke, weekends while Jamal played at the park. The pages were yellowed now, the binding cracked. Marcus ran his fingers over the title page of the one he'd always believed in most, Inherited Light, a story about a father and son reconnecting after years of estrangement, set against the backdrop of the 1992 Los Angeles riots. He'd written it the year before Serena got sick, when he still believed it was just a matter of time before someone recognized his talent, before medical bills and funeral costs had drained their savings, before he'd packed away his typewriter and picked up the car keys that now represented his livelihood. Marcus stayed up until 3 in the morning reading the screenplay, making small corrections in the margins, remembering the passion that had once driven him. When he finally slept, it was with the script beside him on the bed, like an old friend who had returned after a long absence. The Apex Productions building in Century City gleamed in the afternoon sun, a tower of glass and steel that reflected the California sky. Marcus parked in the validated visitor section, straightened his one good tie, and took a deep breath before grabbing his worn portfolio containing Inherited Light. The security guard checked his ID, the receptionist announced his arrival, and a young assistant escorted him to the 11th floor, where Richard Brennan's corner office offered panoramic views of Los Angeles. The city sprawled out below, a tapestry of neighborhoods, highways, and hills, including, somewhere in the distance, the small apartment where Jamal was probably studying. Brennan rose from behind his desk, his handshake firm and genuine. "Marcus, thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Brennan. Richard, please." He gestured to a seating area by the windows, more casual than the imposing desk. "Would you like coffee? Water?" "Water would be great," Marcus said, his mouth suddenly dry. They settled into leather chairs with their drinks, and Marcus felt the surreal quality of the moment wash over him. 5 days ago, he'd been just another Uber driver. Now he was sitting in a Hollywood producer's office with a screenplay in his lap. "So," Brennan began, "you mentioned you used to write. Tell me about that." Marcus hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I wrote screenplays for about 8 years. Got close a few times. Had an agent briefly, took some meetings. But nothing ever came of it. Then my wife got sick, and we had medical bills and my son needed stability. So I put it aside." Brennan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "What kind of stories did you write?" "Stories about people like me. Black men trying to navigate worlds that weren't built for them. Fathers and sons. The complexities of communities like the one I grew up in. But with hope, always with hope. Do you have any of your work with you?" Marcus patted the portfolio. "Just one, my favorite. I stayed up all night rereading it, wondering if it was as good as I remembered." He gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. "It needs work. May I?" Brennan held out his hand. Marcus passed over the screenplay, suddenly nervous. Brennan opened it, scanning the title page and the first few scenes with the practiced eye of someone who had read thousands of scripts. Would you mind if I kept this to read properly? I can have it messengered back to you tomorrow. Of course, Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. I appreciate you taking the time. Brennan set the script aside and leaned forward slightly. Marcus, I'll be honest with you. When you returned my wallet that night, you could have easily taken the cash. No one would have known. But you didn't, and that told me something about your character. He paused. Character is rare in this business. Talent isn't. This town is full of talented people. But integrity? That's harder to find. I'm not sure what you're saying, sir. I'm saying I like people who do the right thing even when no one is watching. And I'm curious about your story, both the one in that screenplay and your own. Brennan's gaze was direct, evaluating. We're launching a diversity initiative here at Apex, looking for voices that have been overlooked. Perspectives that can reach audiences who don't see themselves represented authentically on screen. Marcus felt his heart rate accelerate. Are you offering me something? I'm offering to read your screenplay with genuine interest. Beyond that, Brennan shrugged. Let's see where the conversation takes us. But I will say this. We're staffing a writer's room for a new series about South Central in the early 2000s. We need writers who lived it, not just researched it. The possibility hung in the air between them, fragile as a soap bubble. Marcus was afraid to reach for it, afraid it would burst at his touch. I should tell you, he said carefully, I haven't written professionally in almost 6 years. But you've lived, you've struggled, you've raised a son, you've survived in a city that eats dreams for breakfast. Brennan leaned back. Sometimes stepping away from writing makes the writing better when you return to it. You have experiences to draw from now that you didn't have before. Marcus nodded slowly, allowing himself to consider what Brennan was suggesting. I would need to keep driving until something solid materialized. My son's tuition. Of course, I understand responsibilities. Brennan stood, signaling the end of their meeting. Read your screenplay tonight, Marcus. I will too. Let's talk again next week. As Marcus drove home, the city looked different somehow. The same streets and buildings, but viewed through a lens of renewed possibility. He found himself noticing details he'd stopped seeing years ago. The quality of light as it filtered through jacaranda trees, the expressions on pedestrians' faces, the contrast between neighborhoods as he crossed invisible boundaries. He was seeing with a writer's eyes again. When he arrived home, Jamal was at the kitchen table surrounded by textbooks, music playing softly from his laptop. He looked up when Marcus entered, immediately sensing something had changed. What happened? He asked, removing his earbuds. Marcus set his keys on the counter, trying to contain his cautious optimism. I had a meeting today with that producer whose wallet I returned. Jamal's eyebrows rose. For real? What did he want? He's reading one of my old screenplays, talking about a diversity initiative. Writers' rooms. Marcus shook his head, still processing. It might be nothing, but it felt like something. Jamal was silent for a moment. Then he stood and walked to the closet. From the top shelf, he pulled down a shoebox Marcus had never seen before. Inside was a stack of papers, handwritten scenes, dialogue snippets, character sketches. What's this? Marcus asked, though he already knew. I've been writing too, Jamal said quietly. Since I was 15. I didn't tell you because I knew how you felt about it, how much it hurt you. Marcus leafed through the pages, recognizing in his son's words the same passion that had once driven him, the same eye for detail, the same ear for how people really talk. These are good, Jamal. His voice caught. Really good. I know, Jamal said without arrogance, just certainty. I got it from you. In that moment, standing in their small kitchen with his son's writings in his hands and the possibility of his own second chance taking shape, Marcus felt something shift inside him. A wall that had been carefully constructed over years of disappointment began to crumble. I've been trying to protect you from pain, Marcus said softly, from the kind of rejection I faced. But I've been wrong, dead wrong. Jamal's smile was tentative but real. So I can take that film class? You can take that film class. Marcus put his hand on his son's shoulder. And maybe we could write something together sometime. The week that followed took on a dreamlike quality. Marcus continued driving his Uber shifts, but now he dictated ideas into his phone between passengers. He stayed up late revising Inherited Light, strengthening scenes that felt weak in retrospect, deepening characters who now seemed two-dimensional with his added years of life experience. Jamal joined him at the kitchen table each night, working on his own stories, occasionally asking questions or offering suggestions. It became a collaboration, a shared passion rediscovered and nurtured in the warm circle of lamplight as the city slept around them. When Brennan called the following Monday, Marcus was picking up a fare at the airport. He let the call go to voicemail, his hands suddenly slick on the steering wheel. Only after dropping off his passenger did he pull into a gas station parking lot to listen to the message. "Marcus, Richard Brennan here. I've read your screenplay. Twice, actually. I'd like to meet again. Tomorrow, if possible. Please call my assistant to arrange a time." A pause then. "It's good, Marcus. Really good. Let's talk." The next day found Marcus back in Brennan's office, this time with a revised version of Inherited Light, and something he hadn't felt in years: confidence. Brennan wasn't alone. A woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes sat beside him, introduced as Elaine Morgan, head of development. They didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Your screenplay needs work," Elaine said directly. "The third act drags. The mother character's underdeveloped, but the core relationship between father and son, the authenticity of the setting, the dialogue, those are exceptional." Marcus nodded, accepting the critique. "I agree about the third act. I've been reworking it." "Good," Brennan said, "because we'd like to option it." The words hung in the air. Marcus had played this moment in his head 1,000 times over the years, imagined exactly how it would feel. The reality was both more and less overwhelming than he'd expected, a calm certainty rather than wild elation. And Brennan continued, "We'd like to offer you a position in the writer's room for our South Central project. It's a 10-episode commitment starting next month." Now the elation came, washing over Marcus in a wave that made his fingertips tingle and his vision blur slightly at the edges. He managed to keep his voice steady as he asked about details: the option terms, the salary for the writing position, the expectations. The numbers Brennan quoted would change everything. No more 14-hour days behind the wheel. No more choosing between electricity and groceries. No more deferring Jamal's dreams to keep him from financial hardship. "Why me?" Marcus asked finally. "There are hundreds of talented writers in this city. Thousands." Brennan exchanged a glance with Elaine before answering. "Because talent without character is a liability in this business. When you returned my wallet that night, you revealed something essential about yourself. And when I read your screenplay, I saw that same quality in your writing. An unflinching honesty, a moral center." He leaned forward. "Plus, you can really write dialogue, Marcus. That's rarer than you might think." As Marcus drove home, the city transformed once more before his eyes. The palm trees lining Wilshire Boulevard stood taller. The afternoon light gilded buildings he'd passed 1,000 times without really seeing. At a red light, he caught his reflection in the rearview mirror and saw something he hadn't seen in years: the face of a man whose dreams were still possible. When he pulled up to their apartment building, Jamal was sitting on the front steps waiting for him, as if he'd somehow sensed this was a day to remember. Marcus climbed out of the car slowly, savoring the moment. "Well?" Jamal asked, standing. Marcus allowed himself a smile that started small and grew until it threatened to split his face. "They're optioning my screenplay." Jamal whooped, a sound of pure joy that echoed through the courtyard. "I knew it. I knew they would." And Marcus continued, "They offered me a job in a writer's room. A real job, son. Writing for television." Jamal's eyes widened. He threw his arms around his father, and Marcus held him tight, feeling the rapid beat of his son's heart against his chest. "You did it, Dad," Jamal whispered. "You really did it." "No," Marcus replied, his voice thick with emotion. "We did it. Your belief in me, it never wavered, even when mine did." That night, they ordered pizza, the good kind, from the Italian place they usually save for birthdays, and sat at their small kitchen table making plans. Marcus would keep driving for 2 more weeks until the writer's room started. The option money would pay off their debts. The television job would see Jamal through college without loans. "I want you to focus on school," Marcus told his son. "Take that film class. Take 2 if you want. But get your degree." Jamal nodded, his eyes bright with possibilities. "And then," Marcus smiled, thinking of the conversation he'd had with Brennan before leaving his office. About mentorship programs, about creating pipelines for diverse talent, about changing the industry from within. "And then," he said, "we make sure that talent gets recognized, no matter where it comes from. We hold doors open instead of having to break them down." 3 months later, Marcus stood in the center of a writer's room at Apex Productions, dry erase marker in hand, outlining a pivotal scene for episode 4. Around the table sat 6 other writers, including Elaine Morgan, all watching as he mapped out the emotional arc of a character based loosely on his own father. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from Jamal, who was acing his film class and had just been accepted into a competitive summer internship program Brennan had recommended him for. "Killing it today, Dad. Can't wait to hear about it tonight." Marcus smiled at the message, then returned his attention to the room full of writers, his colleagues, his peers, who were waiting for him to continue. "So our character has a choice here," he said, capping the marker. "He can hold on to his pride, or he can accept help. And what I know from experience is that sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is to allow himself to be helped. To recognize that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the doorway to possibility." As heads nodded around the table, Marcus caught Brennan watching him from the doorway, a small smile of satisfaction on his face. They exchanged a nod of mutual respect. Two men connected by a lost wallet, yes, but more profoundly by a recognition of what truly matters: integrity, perseverance, and the courage to believe in second chances. Outside the windows of the writer's room, Los Angeles stretched in all directions, a city of dreams deferred, dreams abandoned, and sometimes dreams unexpectedly fulfilled. Marcus had once been just another face in its vast sprawl, just another driver ferrying others to their destinations. Now he was exactly where he was meant to be, telling stories that mattered, creating worlds on the page that reflected the complex reality of his own experience. And most importantly, showing his son that dreams didn't have expiration dates, that sometimes they simply waited for the right moment to be remembered, reclaimed, and realized. The lost wallet had been just the beginning. The real discovery had been Marcus himself, finding his way back to the writer, the creator, the man he had always been beneath the weight of struggle and sacrifice. And that, he now understood, was the most valuable return of all.